National Day of Prayer. President Donald Trump holds a ceremony on the importance of faith in our daily lives. We're at the White House. Where's the beef? The effects of the coronavirus pandemic have moved beyond meat processing plants and are now hitting dinner plates. How one lawmaker wants to fix it. Guarding the Pope. We hear about a mass honoring the Vatican Swiss Guards. And a deeper look. The Holy Father says Christianity is more than ethics and principles. We'll explain. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, May 7th, 2020. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight, Americans are praying, reflecting, and giving thanks on this National Day of Prayer. The day arrives in the grips of a pandemic that has killed or sickened millions across the globe. And while the disease may seem overwhelming at times, it's prayer that we turn to for peace, comfort, healing, and encouragement. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Tracy, earlier I spoke with Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway, a Catholic, and asked her why this National Day of Prayer is so vitally important, especially right now.
This year it takes on a special significance, if not consequence, knowing that we are praying for all those who have lost their lives and all those who are grieving the loss of their loved ones, especially I have to say those who felt that they could not say that final goodbye, which is so important to everyone. The COVID-19 has interrupted our daily life in so many ways, and we need to be prayerful and we need to be unified.
Kellyanne Conway told me she prays every day she enters the White House.
I pray for all of those first responders, healthcare workers, all the people who feel isolated and alone, who feel economically desperate, who feel vulnerable to the pandemic. I pray for the elderly who are told that they're vulnerable to the pandemic, many of whom are alone and isolated. I pray for all of our children, including and most especially my 4, but all of our children, because they're confused and they're scared. And this is a very fraught time for them also. They have been totally upended from their normal educational and social structures as well, and their sports structures. I pray for those who have no one to pray for them. And a prayer is central to my life, and I think the most important part about my prayerful life is that I'm not ashamed to say that to anyone.
Also taking part in the National Day of Prayer at the White House, faith leaders like Bishop Dwight Green of the Church of God in Christ. He called the day a rallying point.
To let people of faith believe and know that there is a large contingent of people around the country that's praying that God will give us a resolution to this matter.
And for Brooklyn landlord Mario Salerno, who we told you about last month when he paid his tenants' rents in front of the West Wing, the Catholic told us prayer is essential to beating the coronavirus.
We have to ask the good Lord on this special prayer day to help not only our leaders, our doctors, but we all have to put this together because this vicious virus stopped us dead in our tracks, and we have to get back.
While the pandemic has led to so much illness, death, misery, and suffering, it has also clearly drawn millions of people closer to God through prayer, here on this National Day of Prayer. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Vice President Mike Pence delivered face masks and other medical equipment to a rehabilitation center in Northern Virginia. He also discussed the timetable for reopening the country.
So we're making great progress. But there are states across the country that are much lower. There are counties across the country that are much lower. And so I think the governors are doing well to evaluate their opening plans on a county-by-county basis, and decisions about summer activities, decisions about school going forward will be made on that basis.
The delivery by the vice president was the first of more than 15,000 that nursing homes will receive across the country by the end of next month. Earlier today, Vice President Pence said it was, quote, beyond the pale for a Virginia pastor to have been issued a citation for having 16 people at a Palm Sunday service. In a radio interview on Fox News, the vice president said freedom of religion applies even during a national emergency. Authorities claim the pastor violated coronavirus restrictions. The Justice Department says that it is dropping the criminal case against President Trump's first national security advisor. General Michael Flynn was charged with lying to the FBI in a 2017 interview. His lawyers, citing newly disclosed emails from FBI agents, say their client was improperly trapped into lying. The announcement is a stunning reversal for one of the signature cases brought by the special counsel investigating possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. The coronavirus outbreak is impacting U.S. meat processing plants and causing shortages for some restaurants as well as grocery stores. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill are focusing on ways to correct that. Correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
Tracy, once just a funny, clever 1980s Wendy's ad slogan, "Where's the beef?" is now a question on the minds of Americans. But Congressman Thomas Massie says he has growing support for a bill he believes will help.
There are lots of livestock producers, but all those animals have to flow through a small number of very large packing facilities.
U.S. beef and pork processing capacity is down 40% from last year, and several meat packing facilities have closed in the last 2 weeks due to the coronavirus.
I'm a farmer. That's my farm back there. I raise beef cattle.
Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie tells me it's time to revive the local mom and pop meat processors.
It's hard for people to buy $1,000 of meat at a time and buy a freezer to keep it in and hope the electricity doesn't go out. What my bill would do, it's not that drastic of a change. It just says that farmers could sell a hamburger instead of half a cow to a consumer.
Congressman Massie's Prime Act would make it legal for small meat processors to distribute directly to restaurants and grocery stores, plus household consumers within the state. President Trump last week enacted the Defense Production Act to classify meat processing as critical infrastructure. Iowa's governor says that saved Americans from a severe meat shortage.
We're going to hopefully prevent what could have been, a really sorry situation where we were euthanizing some of our protein supply and really impacting the food supply.
But with 1 in 5 Wendy's restaurants temporarily out of beef and grocery stores limiting meat sales due to a lack of supply, Congressman Massie says the Prime Act can help now.
We need to make America great again, not by giving relief to the multinational meat packers that have a monopoly on our food supply, but by empowering Americans to raise our own food.
Congressman Massie tells me that he's picked up 12 more co-sponsors for the bill this week, both Republicans and Democrats. He hopes that it will come up for a vote very soon. And there's growing support for a similar bill in the Senate. Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Italy says public masses can resume on May 18th. The decision was made following an agreement between government officials and the country's Catholic bishops. Health regulations will be enforced by parishes. Masses have not been held since the coronavirus lockdown began on March 8th. The Vatican announces its 12th positive coronavirus case. The Holy See employee had been working from home since early March. Prior to returning to the office, the worker tested positive and remains self-isolated at home. The Holy Father and German leader Angela Merkel held a phone call today to discuss the coronavirus crisis. The two agreed that disadvantaged countries need more support during the pandemic. Merkel also invited Pope Francis to visit Germany when possible. The Vatican Swiss Guards held an annual mass yesterday to honor those who died during an attack on Rome in the 16th century. More than 24 guards attended the ceremony. It was more quiet than usual because of the pandemic. Attendees respected social distancing measures. The mass replaced the annual swearing-in ceremony of the new recruits, which is postponed until October. Marco Radovinovic, Corporal of the Pontifical Swiss Guards, joins us now from Rome. Thank you so much for being with us, Marco.
Thank you to you. It's an honor for me to be here, interviewed by you.
Well, thank you so much. So tell us, why was yesterday an important day for the Swiss Guards?
Well, like every year, each 6th of May, we celebrate the swearing-in of the new recruits for the Swiss Guards. We remember also the day where 147 guards died to protect the Pope Clement VII. And for us, it's a day that means a lot, both because of history and both because the new recruits, they swear to protect with their lives the life of the Pope.
I know things have been different for everyone during the lockdown. How has work been like for all of you during this time?
For us, it didn't change a lot because we have to grant the security of the Vatican State and, of course, the life of the Pope. And so we continued with our routine as ever. Of course, it was strange because we had to adopt the measures of hygiene and security that everyone had to do in Italy and also in the Vatican State.
I know the Swiss Guards were unable to swear in yesterday by tradition. What's the recruitment process normally been like?
Well, for that it didn't change a lot, which means that the guards from Switzerland, they are still applying to come here. Of course, things to organize are a little bit more difficult because we have to organize the journey from Switzerland to Rome, which as of now it's very hard because Italy has locked down everything. But we still have appliances, we still have our requirements to meet and so on. And in a couple of weeks, the new recruits will come here, hopefully, if everything goes well, but we're going forward.
Great, wonderful. Well, Marco, we don't have much time, but I would like to know, what has your experience been like serving the Pope in the Vatican every day?
Well, it was hard at the beginning to get used to this new lifestyle, this routine, also because we live in the Vatican State, which is a state apart from the rest, and we are in close contact with the Pope. But of course, once you get the chance and to meet the Pope and you're actually there serving him, talking to him, it's a fantastic emotion. As of today, after 5 years, I'm still emotional when I see the Pope coming towards me to shake hands or talk a little bit.
Oh, that's wonderful, Marco. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed speaking with you. Marco Radovinovic, Corporal of the Pontifical Swiss Guards. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
The leader of Scotland is extending the lockdown for another 3 weeks.
Our assessment of the evidence leads me to the conclusion that the lockdown must be extended at this stage.
Scotland's First Minister says the lockdown is necessary and that Scotland will not be pressured into lifting the lockdown. Authorities in the UK were hoping to coordinate the lifting of restrictions with all 4 nations. In London, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to ease restrictions on Sunday. The death toll from a gas leak at a chemical plant this morning in India is now up to 13, and hundreds of people are in the hospital. Dozens of ambulances rush people to hospitals in southern India. Some were fainting in the streets as they tried to run from the chemical plant. A fire at the plant caused the deadly gas leak. People complained of a strong smell and had difficulty breathing. The chemical plant had just reopened after shutting down for the lockdown in India. A spike in COVID-19 in the capital of Kenya is forcing authorities to impose a lockdown to contain the hotspot. A suburb in Nairobi is shut off from the rest of the city. The lockdown will last for the next 15 days. Police are stopping people from entering the quarantined area. Coming up, Pope Francis warns Christians not to have elitist attitudes. We'll explain. Pope Francis has accepted the resignation of a bishop in Ohio who was accused last year of failing to act on allegations made against a priest. Cincinnati Auxiliary Bishop Joseph Binzer offered his resignation after conversations with the Holy See. The Cincinnati Archdiocese says Bishop Binzer had already been removed as director of priest personnel after failing to raise concerns about the priest. African Americans in the U.S. are dying in disproportionate numbers from COVID-19. They are especially exposed because they're more likely to hold many of the jobs that are deemed essential. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, one example of this would be in New York City, the virus outbreak epicenter in the U.S., where black people make up a little less than 25% of the population, yet account for more than 40% of the public transit workforce. And now we're hearing from church leaders and healthcare professionals advocating for vulnerable communities.
Adding a voice of concern for the vulnerable, this week the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops released a statement saying, in part, "Our hearts are wounded for the many souls mourned as African American communities across the nation are being disproportionately infected with and dying from the virus that causes COVID-19. The bishops urge state and national leaders to examine the causes and find the solutions that will last beyond the virus."
But in a lot of African American communities across the country, they don't have the access to medical care, especially to the primary care that they deserve and that they need.
For Lewis Brown, it's personal. He says African American friends and acquaintances of his family have been directly impacted by COVID-19, some even dying. Brown is the executive director of the Christ Medicus Foundation, a Catholic nonprofit focused on holistic health care.
And so we have to take care, particularly of those that are materially impoverished, those that are vulnerable, especially because of a pre-existing health condition. We have to take care of those folks.
And at this time, spiritual nourishment is vital as well. At Holy Family Church outside Baltimore, one parishioner passed away after experiencing complications from COVID-19, and 4 others have tested positive. The church's pastor, Father Raymond Harris, says although public masses are canceled, outreach to the ailing community continues.
That the church has not closed, that God's grace has not been suspended, that they can continue to reach out to the parish staff and to me.
Public masses resumed with extra precautions this week in the Diocese of Austin, Texas. DeCarlos Blackman belongs to a predominantly African-American parish and works for the diocese. He tells me, "We need to meet each other where we are, regardless of ethnicity or religious affiliation. We need to encounter each other and accompany each other."
I also spoke with Bishop Joseph Perry, an auxiliary bishop in Chicago today. He was one of the co-signers in that USCCB statement from earlier this week. He told me that government leaders must make wise judgments that will entail everyone's safety when deciding when to open up parts of the country again. And he said he would hope that the African American community would not be thrown under the bus when those decisions are made. Tracy?
Okay, thank you, Mark. Correspondent Mark Irons reporting for us tonight. Pope Francis thanks artists, saying that without beauty, one cannot truly understand the gospel.
E senza il bello, il Vangelo non si può capire.
At his daily Mass, Pope Francis says Christianity is made up more than ethical and moral principles. To be a true Christian is realizing that we are part of a human family that belongs to God. When we remember that God died for all of us, we have a sense of the true faith and its infallibility. And a reminder that EWTN broadcasts Mass throughout the day, including the Pope's Mass. Mass airs from Irondale, Alabama at 8 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. Eastern. We're also airing other special programming, including the Pope's Daily Mass. And you can find our schedule at EWTN.com. And there you will also find Eucharistic adoration throughout the day. Up next, the Holy Father approves the next steps in sainthood for 5 men and women, including an Italian teen. And the path for sainthood formally opens for the parents of St. John Paul II. Pope Francis is advancing the sainthood causes of 5 men and women, including an Italian teenager. Matteo Farina died in 2009 after a battle with cancer. He prayed the rosary every day, and when he was 9 years old, he had a dream that St. Padre Pio told him those without sin are happy and that he must help others understand this. After that, he made it his mission to spread the gospel to young people. And the sainthood causes of the parents of St. John Paul II opened in Poland today. The Archdiocese of Krakow officially formed tribunals to find evidence that Karol and Emilia Wojtyła live lives of heroic virtue and are regarded as intercessors. Emilia refused a doctor's advice to have an abortion because of her bad health. Karol was an army captain who was killed during the Nazi occupation. And we are just one day away from the return of a docuseries that examines the lives and miracles of men and women of faith on the path to sainthood. The EWTN original series, They Might Be Saints, is back tomorrow with new episodes looking at the lives of those on the path to sainthood and the search for canonization-worthy miracles. Joining me now on Skype is the man known as the Miracle Hunter, the producer and host of They Might Be Saints, Michael O'Neill. Michael, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
All right, so let's get right to it. Tomorrow night's show takes a look at the cause of Blessed Miriam Teresa Demjanovic and the miraculous healing of Michael Mercer. Tell us more about that, and what are some of the other causes that you're exploring?
Well, this is an exciting time because this is a project that I've been working on for years, and now we have 12 episodes that are in production and coming out. And starting on Friday at 5:30 Eastern, we'll be seeing the story of Blessed Miriam Teresa Demjanovic. Believe it or not, she's the very first person in the history of the United States to be beatified on American soil. And she was a young nun. She died at the age of 26. She lived from 1901 to 1927. And she had this incredible message, which was that we all have a universal call to holiness. Everybody is meant to be a saint. And so we see this very person who was proclaiming that idea is now on the path to sainthood. And her story and the miracle that was found for her intercession was absolutely incredible.
That's wonderful. And what are some of the other causes that you're exploring?
And when we looked at Blessed Miriam Teresa, we looked at her case, which has a miracle because she's a blessed, a boy cured of macular degeneration. But other cases look as the Bishop of the Barrio, who is Alphonse Gallegos from Sacramento, for example. We're looking at the founder of the Knights of Columbus, Michael McGivney. And we're looking at Venerable Miriam Teresa Demjanovic, but also Maria Kaupas from Chicago. So we have a number of cases that we're looking at. And this is an exciting thing to be able to present Americans who are going to be saints someday.
Absolutely. So how many canonization causes are currently under consideration by the Catholic Church here in the U.S.?
There are thousands worldwide, but in the United States, there's approximately 90 to 100 causes. So some causes fade away when there's not enough support, and there are new causes that are opening all the time. There are several that open every year, but from my records, I would say close to 100 now in the United States.
Michael, I'm curious, what's it like for you as a Catholic conducting this type of research?
Well, I think that these stories of saints, people who are examples for us of how they lived a life of virtue, is great for us as we struggle to live our own faith. We can see real-world examples. And then we have these stories of miracles. So we have these intercessors in heaven working with us and for us in order for us to achieve holiness. And so I think that the stories of miracles remind us that God is there as a loving Father, no matter how hard the times are. Miracles are an inspiration for all of us. So I love a good miracle story.
Yeah, we all do, don't we? I know that you've called yourself a skeptic and a believer all rolled into one. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I think that it's easy enough to be credulous, where you believe just about anything that anybody proposes. But the Catholic Church, for example, looks at miracles in a very serious, special way. The cures must be instantaneous, complete, and lasting. And perhaps trickiest of all, there could be no medical treatment that relates to the cure. So these are real, validated miracles where you can't confuse it, whether it's been medicine that caused the miracle, God working through the hands of a doctor, perhaps. These are cases where they have no natural explanation for what happened. And that's absolutely amazing that the Church promotes these things. And we have real miracles that people from all over the spectrum can look at and say, this is truly inexplicable.
Well, Michael, there's so much we can talk about. I wish we had more time, but we only have time for one more question. I'd love to know, and I know our viewers would love to know, when we can see the next episode.
So when we look at the next one coming up about Blessed Miriam Teresa Demjanovic, that is on Friday, tomorrow. And that's at 5:30 Eastern time. And then after that, we have Father Patrick Payton, the Rosary Priest. His show will be on June 30th. So those are both coming right up.
Michael, thank you so much for coming on our show to talk about your show. Michael O'Neill, producer and host of They Might Be Saints. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.